Oh, there you are, YouTube. Dressed in pink, we're on our way to see Barbie. Back home, okay. So I thought that was pretty good. Now I've seen the Barb of the Barbenheimer. The Heimer will come in soon, and then I can do the whole Barbenheimer. But the Barb is completed, and I like that. It was bringing back a lot of nostalgia from my sister playing with Barbies when I was a kid. I was remembering some of the toys that she had, like the boat. She had like this apartment or something with like an elevator. It had a string that you would pull and it would go up and down, and I always thought that was really cool. Interestingly, like one of the big things in this movie is that, you know, Barbie's always on heels, but this is the early 90s, maybe even the 80s when my sister had her Barbie, probably early 90s. She had like a gymnast Barbie that had flat feet. So, I mean, she had other ones too that were in heels, but I was thinking like, well, you know, my sister had one because she had like all sorts of points of articulation, right? Gymnast Barbie would have that. And I feel like, you know, they talked about Midge being like the pregnant friend of Barbie, and I feel like my sister had a pregnant Barbie. Was there one? Did she have twins or something? Which is funny because I have twins, but I feel like I remember like my sister being able to like take off the back, Barbie's back off, and then shove two babies in it or something. And she maybe had like a checkered like gown on or something, a pink checkered gown. I don't know. That's like in my head. I feel like my sister had a pregnant version of Barbie, but that wasn't like mentioned in the movie. It was just like the Midge character. Alan didn't know anything about him other than what I saw in the previews, but he was a funny aspect to just seeing these ideas that were discontinued. So that was interesting. I guess another thing that was like, I guess, upsetting for me is in the 80s and 90s, Barbie had like a rock band or a rock band essentially, and one of the members was Derek. He spelled his name the same way I do. And I remember, like, I think it was a Thanksgiving Day parade. I remember watching Barbie was I think it was a Thanksgiving Day parade, yeah, and Barbie was there with this band, and we got to see Derek in like live action. So I thought it would have been cool if this movie would have included Derek, because he was my favorite Barbie when I was a kid, just because he had my same name. And my aunt, she's just a little bit older than me, so we were pretty close in age. That was always her favorite Barbie, because, you know, her nephew had the same name. So I was a little disappointed that Derek didn't make an appearance, and it almost seemed like he would, because when he wasn't in the movie portion, but when we got to the end credits, they started showing other Barbies that exist that weren't in the movie, and other Barbie characters within the toy lines. And I was like, oh, we might get Derek here. We might get Derek, but we didn't get Derek. So Derek is not present in here unless there is a smaller Easter egg somewhere that I'm missing. But I feel like that Barbie's band thing, I think, was like a response to Gem, or maybe Gem was a response to the Barbie band. I can't remember what the order. I think Gem came first, but yeah, Derek's not in it. The movie overall, it seems like Margot Robbie, born to play this role. Absolutely beautiful, gorgeous, and the movie even points it out. Like they're trying to have these very emotional moments, and they kind of like point out like this is kind of tough to have a moment like this when Margot Robbie's leading your movie, because she's so gorgeous and everything. So I thought that was kind of fun that the movie poked fun at itself, and it pokes fun at has some heavy issues, but tells them in a light way, when it comes to Barbie world versus our world, and then the how would you feel if you were treated this way, treat others how you would like to be treated sort of thing. Obviously all of that is done through this like Barbie pink lens, which is kind of fun. Some moments though, I think I mostly Will Ferrell, like he felt like such a kids movie villain, and this movie's kind of weird. It feels like a kids movie sometimes, other times it doesn't, but Will Ferrell sometimes was like so slapstick that it felt like I was watching like a kids movie or something. I never watched this movie, but there was a movie with Paul Giamatti where they turn him blue or something like that, and it just seems like he's that kind of person in it. I don't know, like Dunstan checks in villain or something. I don't. He's kind of over the top silly, but this movie really reminded me of things like from the '90s. So much of it made me think of like a '90s movie. Some of it felt elevated and not, and other parts did not. And the parts that did not feel like they were shooting for Oscars felt very like mid small budget studio films of the 90s, like and I think the plot had a lot to do with this, but like the Beverly Hillbillies movie, or something like the Brady Bunch movies, because you have this person, this thing, these people, this family, when talking about those other movies, from this specific era when the world was a certain way. And that's, like Barbie, she's always changing with the times, ever since her creation, but it's almost like she still needs a little bit more evolving, and then she comes into our world, and then that's where she grows. And that just reminded me of the Beverly Hillbillies, because you have, in the 90s movie anyway, you have like the Beverly Hillbillies from the 60s, like when the show was on, like that sort of attitude, and then placing them in the 90s. So, and I guess they really don't evolve or anything. It's more like the 90s people need to evolve. But the Brady Bunch movie sort of does the same thing. You have this family from the late 60s and 70s, and then they're taken to the 90s. Like in some ways, I've always thought that those two movies, or three movies if you count the sequel, are like some of the most 90s movies ever, because they are about the 90s and how different they are than times earlier. And that's sort of what this Barbie movie is. Barbie's been around forever, for a very long time, and they're sort of placing her in our current time, where we're trying to figure out all these social dynamics and things like that. So I thought that was kind of interesting, and I think they do some good things with Ken, sort of pointing out, I don't know, it's like patriarchy and matriarchy, like living under either one of those, pointing out living under either one of those would not be good, because you need to find the I am, the who you are, and it's hard to do that under either one of those. And I thought that was interesting. It's not, it didn't feel one-sided to me, because it's saying that for both sides. Look, living under a matriarchy would not be good for men. Living under a patriarchy, and not good for women when it's very overly structured, sort of thing. When there are no other options, if there are those who do not want to participate in that, right? Like obviously you're going to have people who do want to participate in that, but I think it did a good job of showing that you need other options there. So yeah, I thought it was good. There were moments that felt elevated, moments that felt in the middle, and I think that's a kind of a good thing. You don't want it to be too pristine in whatever it's trying to do. So yeah, overall liked it. Loved Margot Robbie. I just feel like everything I see her in is great. Still have two movies though that I need to see of hers that came out kind of recently. I feel bad for not watching those, but I think she's great. Ryan Gosling, in the previews I thought he was going to be incredibly annoying, and don't think he, I don't know, maybe there were a couple moments he was kind of annoying, but you know, he's just sad because he doesn't want to live in her shadow. He wants to be a man, and in the world he lived in, he wasn't really allowed to be. So, yeah, but yeah, he was annoying a little bit in certain parts, but I think that was sort of the point. And yeah, I liked his character development, and everything was all really nice. And his singing was good. He has a song that's really strong in it. I wonder if any of the music for this movie will be nominated for Oscars. I could even see Ryan Gosling being nominated. Maybe even Margot. You know, this movie is such a cultural event, and the Oscars like to reward those with at the very least nominations. So we'll have to see how the rest of the year goes, but I think those would be very fun nominations that the Academy sort of needs. And honestly, give it a Best Picture nomination if it deserves to be in the 10, because the Academy sort of needs that, especially because this was such a cultural event. That's why I feel like it might help the Oscars, help people tune in if it's a serious contender, where it's not just like we're nominating you, but if it's in a situation to where the Oscars are like, the Academy's like, you know what, we're nominating, but this could very well be a win, and people may want to tune in and see that. Maybe they won't. You never know, but I feel like it wouldn't hurt the Oscars anyway if this film had multiple nominations. The sets were really cool. Set design, loved all that. But yeah, it feels like an uneven movie. I think that's where I was going for when I was saying some of it feels like prestige, but then some of it feels like a 90s kids movie. And it's like Barbie, though, so it should feel like a kid's movie. But it's also tackling these issues and using some language that isn't for kids. So, I don't know. It's kind of like a movie, you know, like in the 90s, in the 80s, when you would watch grown-up movies when you're a kid, it's like putting that together. It's just like making it a reality rather than a kid like, oh my goodness, look at what I'm watching. I'm watching Risky Business right now, and I'm a kid. You know, it's kind of like, you know what? We're just going to fuse those movies together. I mean, it doesn't go as far as Risky Business, but I don't know. Does that make sense what I'm trying to say? I don't even know if I'm making sense. It's just it has levels of G-ratedness and levels of PG-13. You know, I guess that's all I'm saying. Is it swings back and forth between those ratings. But overall, enjoyed it, had a good time. Today is my wife and I's anniversary, so that's what we did. We went to the movies because that's how we bonded, going to the movies. We love movies and TV shows as well. But yeah, the movies, that was one of our favorite pastimes. We don't get to do it as much anymore, but I was glad we were able to make time for it today, our anniversary. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. Did you see Barbie? What do you think of it? I feel like most people like it. I've seen a few reviews out there where people don't, but like seems like critics like it, audiences like it, and people are watching it multiple times. I could hear some people in the theater quoting it already, so I know they had gone multiple times. We wore pink, my wife and I. There were people dressed in pink, people dressed in like full-on outfits, Barbie outfits. The cowboy hat version, saw somebody walk in like that. It was really cool to see people doing that this far out too. The movie's been out for a while, and people are out there rewatching it. Today is like, what is today? Tuesday, and you know, we had a pretty full theater. Anyway, again, curious what you thought about the movie. Thank you so much for watching, and perhaps I'll see you tomorrow for more Pure Hangout.